young teams, and like you mentioned, Matt, the season series has been split, and for Denver, there's much more on the line for them in this game. We've talked about their road woes, and Greg and I were talking about a fourth quarter where this team is starting to. They have a brutal schedule coming up. They are going to be on the road a ton, and this is the kind of game against an opponent like this that you just beat, that you want to have a show or some semblance of being able to dictate 4 to 5 minutes of a game, where you can take control of the game, go to certain sets and involve guys. Fascinating to see Millsap not be, thought of. It's an afterthought within their offensive structure, and they just never were able to catch up with the Lakers.
Yeah, but to me, it's that 4-minute stretch that you have to have where you either close a gap or create separation. It's got to start with your defense. And they don't consistently get stops. We've talked about it. It's why they struggle on the road. Like, it's a direct correlation with winning on the road.
Right.
You've got to be able to string together stops. They give up 35 points in that fourth quarter to the Lakers in a game where they were in control.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't really have their defense as a fallback, it will catch up with them. That's why, to me, they're the one team, when you look at all those teams that are battling, that I'm most concerned about. 7 of their this one included 7 of 9 on the road, which has not been a strong suit for them.
Right.
They struggle defensively, and that's where, to me, Millsap needs to be more involved there than even offensively. But it's hard for him right now to get integrated back in after being out for so long.
I like that sentiment. I mean, you can't have your offense fuel your defensive effort. Denver is this one team that's learning a very valuable lesson that you've got to create some energy by getting stops on defense to feed your offense. And they almost wait for the opposite. They wait for them to get going and getting on these huge runs. And then all of a sudden, they're on the balls of their feet. They're rotating around. They have high hands. And that's just not a great recipe, especially coming down this gauntlet towards the end of the year where all these games pile up and become much, much more intense.
And you guys tell me I'm wrong, but at this point in the season, Mike Malone can preach that all he wants, but the team is kind of who the team is here in March.
They are, and you want to see incremental steps. And why it's so important is because you talked about this being a young team. This is all about confidence. If they don't get this done, it will be detrimental to their confidence moving forward, because you need to have something that you can hang your hat on where you show progress. Mm-hmm. And if you have a scenario play out where down the stretch you gave this thing away because you couldn't get stops, because that's not a part of your DNA, that'll be a bigger picture issue. Conversely, that's what the Lakers have done better this year. We were talking about it during the game.
Yeah.
They've improved markedly defensively, and they did it in the fourth quarter. They win games now with their defense. And if you think about it, they didn't have Brandon Ingram tonight. They've dealt with a plethora of injuries all season long.
Right.
But for that, they might find themselves in the push for the postseason right now, with that being their 31st win.
They've won 8 of 10 now. There's probably too much territory to cover to get to the postseason. But this has been a huge step forward for LA.
I think it's been a huge step not only for the players but for the coaching staff, for Luke Walton to recover from all the junk that was out there regarding Lonzo and some of the things that were not part of their basketball operations. I think he's done a great job of keeping those guys and their spirit alive to make the strides that they have. So Luke deserves a ton of credit, along with their coaching staff, to be preaching what they have. I just want to touch on one quick thing about the Nuggets, Matt. Not having Paul Millsap for as long a stretch as they have. Paul Millsap is one of the best team defenders in the league. If you look at a lot of metrics and what he did here in Atlanta, now I know it's a little bit of a different system, but systematically he knows what good defense is.
Right.
I wonder, because it's been so few games that he's been back, if during this stretch, and it could be critical for Denver's chances to make the postseason, if Paul Millsap has to step up and be as vocal as he's ever been in his career for this young team to get themselves on the right path. You mentioned it. Mike Malone can talk about it. This is who they've been all year long. Well, they've missed Paul Millsap for 50-some-odd games.
Right.
If he gets back in there and starts to use his voice and get on these guys and pick the appropriate times to do that, there is a chance for Denver to have a game or two. I'm not saying they're going to all of a sudden be one of the best defensive teams in the league.
No.
But on 3 of these nights that they're on the road, Matt, maybe that's just enough. So
or a few stretches within a game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch
here
Millsap's approach to that, because when you're removed from the team that long and you haven't been there, even though you're the guy and they're relying on you, you have to sometimes step outside of yourself. And for a young team like this, they just might need Paul Millsap to have a voice like he hasn't before. And that'll be interesting to watch during the next 7 or 8 games for them.
This was a costly loss for the Nuggets because the other 3 teams, they're battling for those final 2 spots in the Western Conference, all won tonight. Clippers, Spurs, Jazz, all winners. Denver loses a game to each and every one of them.